Georgie, I'm so happy that we are finally doing this. You are a great friend, and I wanted to ask you both from a personal point of view and both from a professional point of view. I mentioned this to everyone that these interviews are inspired by Jane and her short story, her short film about her deep love for her own child, for her own family. But she did have a quite rocky road to becoming a mother. This was something that she was deeply desiring. And I'm very interested in exploring the parent-child relationship. I've been listening to people's personal stories. Some of them are beautiful and heartwarming and extremely upbeat. Some of them are excruciatingly painful and just very real about how difficult it can get for family units to come into existence or come together or to live in a healthy and peaceful family life. So I would let's start with the personal, and then we're gonna go to the professional stuff. How are you in life? How are you finding yourself right now? How are you feeling?
Luckily, I'm blessed to say that I'm better than ever before. And not because my life looks in the way that I dream my life to be looking like, but in the way that I feel really grounded and centered and not rushing for life like I used to be. So I feel a sense of settling and a sense of being at home in myself and a sense of purpose that I always looked for, and I was running after like crazy. So from this perspective, even though there's more to experience, and I'm looking forward to experience more of life and in different ways than in the past, I'm pleased to say that I'm in a good place now, feeling comfortable and grateful for exactly how I am in this moment.
I'm so happy to hear that. Since the topic of this discussion is family life and the parent-child relationship, share as much as you wish, as little as you wish. How are you feeling about your family life? How is your relationship with your parents? Whatever you feel like sharing about it. How has your journey been with your parents, and where are you now?
Yeah, with my parents, I had a very complex and painful experience from early days. Not because my mom and dad, they were mean to me or they were abusive or aggressive. It's just because from a very young age, I was somehow naturally able to feel when things were not in order and where it was disharmony and static and conflict in my family. So they used to fight a lot when I was young, and they used to have a lot of contradictory fights, and it always seemed to me from a very young age that it was like almost a power struggle. Sometimes when we're kids and we're fighting with each other, no, it's me, or it's my turn, like, no, it's my turn. So I was looking at them and I was like, why are they fighting over these things? To me, it didn't make any sense. And not only that, they felt like so trivial. It was trivial to me. I was like, why are you fighting about these things when we have so many other things to be grateful about? Or why are you always seeing what's missing and you're not seeing what we're having? And I remember I was about 7 or 8. And that was my mom and my dad their entire life until to this age. There's always this power struggle, like who's right, who's better. If one says one thing, the other one's like, no, but there's a better way. Like, why don't you do it this way? Or and I was obviously there with them in the house. So their dynamic always influenced me so much, and especially because they were repetitive. Like, they're repeating the same thing again and again, and the conversations are the same. And at some point, it must have been my teenage years, I was thinking to myself, like, how come they don't go freaking crazy? Like, are they still sane in their heads? Like, why are they fighting over the same things? It's been years. And at that point, I felt it was way too much. But 20 years later or 30 years later, it's exactly the same thing. They're fighting over the same subjects, the same topics, the same situations, about the same people. And yeah, that was an aspect of it. So it was tough for me to be present there in the house with them and to be witness of this dynamic. That's one thing. And secondly, when I was probably about, I don't know, 17, 18, 19, probably I was at university at that point, and my dad started to put a lot of pressure on me. Until that point, my mom was super critical and controlling and micromanaging things, making sure at the same time she was doing that from definitely a good place, definitely a loving place, but nevertheless, that was dysfunctional. And my mom started to calm down, because probably in her psyche, I was like, okay, she's growing up now. Maybe she doesn't need so much of my attention, so much of my care, so much of like fear projected onto her. So she was kind of like, okay, it's fine. Whereas my dad stepped in and he was like, what are you doing with your life? What are you doing with your career? You have to be this way. You have to be that way. You have to act that way. And I was like, wait a minute. Where's me? You're talking about me. Where's me in this equation? It's just like, and I felt this immense pressure, especially from my dad and from my mom and from society, because it was not about them. It's a systemic thing. It's the community, the way the community thinks, the way the religion is indoctrinated them. So all of these things, they're like bleeding through, and everything was just like dumped on me. And it was tough, and it continued to be tough until very, very recently, until I actually decided to look at these things in a way in which I didn't look at before. So I was able to finally step away. And sometimes I'm still getting caught in like weird situations and dynamics with them, because they really have a hard time letting go of the idea that I'm not a child anymore. I'm autonomous, I'm an adult, and I should be the one taking care of myself, worrying about myself. Yeah, sometimes they're doing from a very good place, but as I said earlier, it's still dysfunctional, and it's kind of like defeating its purpose in a way, because it's not allowing me to be who I am and to step into my adulthood. And I have to make an effort. I have to literally make an effort to be an adult next to my, or in this relationship to my mom and dad. So anyhow, this is in a nutshell, but obviously I can talk about every single thread for like 2 hours. So it depends how long we have.
And remind me, you are an only child, right? So you are a family unit of 3.
Yeah.
How was that like? I mean, obviously, I'm an only child as well, so I don't have a reference point for how it feels like when you have siblings, when you have people who grow up with you experiencing the same family dynamics, because some siblings translate the same two parents very differently. How was that for you, just to be a unit of 3?
Many times I wish I had somebody else, like a brother or a sister, so they don't hyper focus on me, because obviously I was the only one around, and they were just like super focused on me. And probably they would pay attention to me even from the perspective of not paying attention to whatever they had to pay attention in themselves. So I was just there. I was easily accessible. I was available. I was like, okay, nagging and moaning and trying to mold me and twist me and contort me and like do whatever. And I was their only point of attention and focus. So I really wanted to have a brother or a sister. But at the same time, I had moments, and I remember so well, the pain was so excruciating, like the pressure I was feeling from my mom and dad, it was so bad that I was thinking to myself, I'm so happy I don't have a brother or sister because I don't want them to put up with this. I was feeling like, you know what, I better just do this myself. I was not able to imagine how it would be to have another being younger than me. Obviously, I would feel different. If it was older, probably I'll be like, oh, it's our psyches. This is how the psyche works. So I have a feeling that seeing a younger being next to me, 2, 3, 4 years younger, I would have to deal with my own pain and also the pain of seeing this child in a similar situation. Also, there's the possibility that if another child would have been there, things would have been better for both of us, but we never know. So yeah, it was just difficult to be the only one. And at the same time, I have a feeling that it's okay that I've been the only one, because I would not want my brother or younger brother or sister to experience such dysfunctional life.
What about the next generation? How do you feel about having your own kids or adopted children or children in your life?
When I was younger, I always said that I'm going to adopt one. Yeah, I was having this very strong feeling that I want to adopt a child. I don't know why. I was not considering the fact that I can have my own. But there was something unconscious in me that I was like, oh, maybe I'm not going to be able to have children. For whatever reason, unconsciously, I was thinking that I might be infertile. Now I understand better the dynamic, the subconscious dynamic of why that was the case. So for quite a long time, I was thinking that I'm going to adopt. And then later on, when I started zooming out and also learning more about parenting and children and child developmental traumas and how the brain develops and all of the things, I realized that it is a huge mission to be a parent. And I would personally not take that lightly. It's not a child, from my perspective, is not something that's supposed to be fulfilling my life. It's not supposed to bring me anything extra. Like it's very important to have a correct positioning when it comes to having a child. The only situation or that comes to mind right now that I'll have a child, the position, the energy I would like to have the child from, it would be if I would be so, I don't know, in a healthy relationship, I would be already settled, I would just have a fairly nice and fairly easy life, and it won't be too big of a challenge or sacrifice to have a child, meaning that I have the emotional bandwidth, I have the time, I have the money or the resources that the child needs to grow and develop healthily. I cannot imagine leaving my child to kindergarten or grandma, like that kind of stuff is just not sitting well with me. So yeah, and also the responsibility of having a child and the realization of how much energy and attention they require. So now I'm thinking that if I would if I would really feel a deep calling within myself, I'm open to have a child. But looking at the world, that's one thing that's kind of like putting me off. And also I understand that an ideally would be people with awareness and people who are able to raise healthy, secure children should be the one having more children than the other. the rest of the population. So in a way, it's a detrimental thinking, but I still believe like there's a huge mission. So I'm very open and pleased to help mothers, for example. I will be happy to offer them a community space, to offer them tools, resources for them to relax and to recharge themselves. Because, yeah, having a child, from my perspective, I know how much work I have to do with my own inner child. And this is something I can talk to. I'm in communication with. Is a part of me that is talking back. And says like, I need this and I did not. And it's like, what? Are you sure this is what you need? Like, are you sure you want to draw now or paint or whatever? But how do you talk with a 2 years old, 3 years old, and a child doesn't have emotional literacy? So how do I communicate? Like, I have to be so attuned, and is like I'm learning to be attuned to my own inner child and to myself. And I still find it hard many times. So like, oh, shoot, I missed that. I definitely missed that signal. I definitely missed that point. So yeah, I'm not yet sure. Maybe life will bring me to a situation that I will really have this like energy of like energy that evokes the desire to have a child. But yeah, for now, I feel like I'm still in the observation and experimentation phase with my own inner child, and also with children, my friends' children, my other kids I have around in my life.
Absolutely. You did mention that you might would want to offer a community for mothers. How do you feel about the old ways versus the new ways of raising children in a communal setting, when a child would have quasi more than two parents because a whole community would raise a child, versus the system that we have now, especially in the Western world, where it falls on the shoulders of two, sometimes only one person to raise another human being, or more than one?
Yeah. To be honest, no matter how much I try to squeeze my brain to find one woman that is fulfilled as a mother, I can't. I know that I do have a, let's say, acquaintance online. It's not my direct friend. We don't really talk, but we had like, we crossed paths in the past, and she's a mother now, and she looks radiant. She feels secure. She's full of life, but at the same time, she has an amazing support, which is her partner. So they are both very much on the same page in terms of values, in terms of like lifestyle. He's very well off, like secure in his business. Also, she has her own online business, and she did so much inner work before this moment that now she is very well resourced to deal with this child. And maybe, yeah, there are a few more like those, and I'm sure there are more like people like those. But in my reality, other than her, people that I really know, I don't know any other mother that is not exhausted, that is not fed up with life, that is not saying at least now and again, I'm just like, and I wish I didn't have kids. And this doesn't mean that the mother doesn't love the child. One of my best friends, she loves her two boys. She absolutely, but sometimes she's like, I'm allowing myself to say, for today, for this second, I wish I didn't have kids, because it takes a lot. Yeah. And she was saying like, I'm not going out anymore. I'm not doing the things I used to do. I'm not organizing events. And I'm not saying going out partying. I'm saying going for a walk, go and do something artsy, something tangible with her hands, do something to beautify herself. No. 2 kids, different ages. I want this, I want that, I want this, I want that. Take this one to that place, and the other one wants it as well. So I even have friends with kids that are 8 years, 9 years, 12, 13, 16. everyone across the board are having struggles, is having struggles. It's really, really tough. And I personally believe that one thing, the father or the partner or the masculine figure in the family has to be there, present, not just providing, because I have loads of friends, the husbands are incredibly well providers, like really good providers. And we're talking about, if you want a new, I know, car, yes, you can have it. You want this holiday for 10 days, no problem. But they're not there emotionally. Yeah. And for them, I see it doesn't matter if the guy comes home and puts a stash of cash, or he just like charge, I don't know how many thousands, or whatever in the account. It's not about that, because they come home exhausted, they tend to check out, they scroll on their phones, they look, they watch something, and there's not this emotional connection. So therefore the mother is still the one taking care of the house, taking care of the kids. If she has a job, then she has to go to work, and it's too much. Mothers need support, and it's absolutely daylight clear the difference when the mother has support from the partner. She's radiant, she's happy, she's joyful, she gives love to the partner, she gives love to the baby, she's not stretched, she's not exhausted. Obviously, she goes through emotional states and emotional waves, and that's human, and it's okay. Yeah, and sometimes they swap, like, hey, there's more on you today, and there's less on me today, and the other way around. But they have this balance. I really believe that it's not even enough 2 or few people, because I also see situations in which there's the family unit, and also, let's say, the in-laws, whatever, his or her in-laws, they're helping with the children. But if they're not also educated, and if they are also superficial, if how fireworks, if they are just not present themselves, or they are still underneath the layers of dysfunctionality and trauma from their own childhood and lives and family systems, it's still not necessarily beneficial. Because I've seen situations in which the mother wants a specific education, and because she doesn't have any option, she will leave the child with her mother or in-law, and they will tend to educate the child in a different way. Or they will, and sometimes they're not even willing to just allow the mother to decide whatever she wants, and them to be like a support. They still have this tendency to intervene in one way or the other, or I know it better, I raised you, kind of thing. I have 3 kids before you had your 1 kid, so I don't. Nah, yeah, like this conflict of seniority, of generation, of whatever it is detrimental. So to cut this short, I believe we do need a tribe to raise a child. Yeah, like that child needs somebody to push his limits in a healthy way, somebody that is going to teach the child bravery and courage, somebody that's going to teach the child how to be emotionally vulnerable, somebody that's going to, and it's not even about teaching, it's about modeling. So how much can a mother and a father can model in a family? Unless they're really well prepared, like really, really well prepared, they're not going to model it in a way that the child is going to go into its fullest expression and like the most expansive self that it can possibly get. Whereas in a tribe, let's say, they will pick up, one thing from there, one thing over. And of course, even the tribe now, it matters what kind of people is formed of. Obviously, it's not going to be, it is important. But yeah, I believe at least few people have to be in contact with each other, and also present in the child's life, for the child to have the foundation. Because and again, even in this situation, we don't need perfect parenting. We don't need the perfect tribe. We don't need like the most, I don't know, educated in every single aspect people. No, we need good enough. But it's very important to have the presence. That's probably like the most important thing, foundational. And then to have the willingness, to also understand that this being that is growing and developing has wisdom and has a lot more available to themselves than we as an adult or adult might think. So it's really important to kind of like be okay with myself to the extent in which I can allow that child that grows to be themselves. Because if I'm not okay with myself and I'm micromanaging myself and I'm having my own fears and my own limitations, so that's the second thing I want to get to. So presence is really important. And the second thing is a community or a space that is not very limited or like very indoctrinated in or whatever. It's kind of like, okay, I'm willing to hear, I'm willing to explore, I'm willing to do it better. Let's move towards that. So I feel like these two factors, if they're present, then it's good enough and it doesn't have to be perfect. And nobody has to be pressured about anything or perform anything. It just comes naturally. It just happens.
Such a good point. And I love about, you were mentioning modeling, that sometimes it's extremely taxing for the one person, the one parent or the two parents to model every version of developmental needs that a child is needing. We are creating humans out of scratch, from scratch. And it can be hugely tiring, exhausting to be everything that child needs. Similarly, as we do it with partners, that we want to be everything for that partner. We want to be friends. We want to be confidants. We want to be the intimate partner. We want to be the party goer. And, you can just do everything with that one person. Is the same thing for the child, that children need a whole village around them to become well-rounded adults. So I totally agree. How do you feel about the systemic dynamics? First, I'm going to ask in a personal way, that how would you feel bringing in children to your own family system?
Are you meaning adoption?
Yeah, whether it's an adopted child or whether it would be your child, but just say another new human being is entering your family system. How do you see that play out?
It's different when there's my own child. Of course, there's going to be creating a new bubble, like a new system. It's going to be me and my partner and our relationship. Now it's going to be me and my partner, our relationship, and the child, and our relationship with the child, and our individual relationship with the child. So it gets a little bit more complex. But I see it as definitely an initiation in ways that I'm not yet going to understand. I mean, of course, I can understand certain things from my own experience with my own inner child and different experiences in everything that I've learned and everything that I really filtered through my being again and again and again and again. So it feels like a huge step. And what I've seen from an observer perspective is that the relationship between the partners is going to change 100% every single time. There's no other way around it, because there's another being, there's another entity, there's another individual there. And also these dynamics, because it's not just like me and the partner, as I said, like there are these connections, this like arrows, energetic cords that are connecting us. So is not so simple. And even between two partners, it's still challenging and complicated at times to have the awareness of the we instead of the I. And now there's a child, so I have the understanding and the awareness of me and him and us as the three of us and the child individually. So it becomes really complex. And I've seen also, I have conversations, or I've seen situations in which the dynamic between partners would change. And it is tough, because when we go in a relationship, we're having certain expectations, consciously or unconsciously. We are used to with a specific dynamic, and then this child appears, and my attention has to go towards this child. So obviously I'm not going to have enough time for myself at the same time. I'm not going to have the same time for my partner. We're not going to have the same bandwidth for a million other things. And that is going to put us in a situation, which is an opportunity every single time, to learn a new way of living and a new way of growth and expansion. But I personally believe it's just complex, and it has to have some level of understanding and some sort of preparation. It's not necessarily something that I personally don't believe we can go into this kind of situations with the full trust that we're just going to make it. We're going to find our way and everything is going to be okay. That's a pretty magical thinking that I used to have, and I don't have anymore, because I trust in my understanding that it takes a lot. It takes a lot. So it's just so much. I cannot even probably begin to share how I see it changing the life unit and the lifestyle and the family system in one child that is born out of that family system. When it comes to adoptions, well, the implications are immense. Yeah, psychologically, emotionally, systemically, because now is me and my partner that came together. So is my family system and his family system that came together, with all of our good things, and also with our not so good things and our traumas and entanglements. So first, yeah, we're in an unconscious or conscious attempt to either repeat or repair dynamics between these two family systems. And now we're having a child coming from a third family system, which we're going to become partners with. We're going to become entangled with that family system. So if the load was this much from these two, now the load is even bigger, because there's this. And also, let's say I'm adopting a child with my partner, but we are not the biological parents. So systemically, the biological parents, they're always going to have priority. They are the most important from the perspective of they are the ones that gave life to this child that now exists. And in a way, we are becoming the guardians of the child. And of course, we can share all the love and treat the child as our own. But also, even if I would give birth to a child, I'm still a guardian. I don't own the child. So it's not too much of a difference in terms of how I would position myself as a mother for my own child or for an adopted child. I'm still the guardian. I'm still somebody that is facilitating a new life, yeah, to come through. And at the same time, I'm not owning anything. I'm just taking care of this being until this being is going to be fully developed and well developed in order to be able to take care of themselves. So yeah, there's a little bit more complexity in adoptions. However, it's still very possible, but I would go a little bit and work systemically there to make sure that everybody knows the order and where they are in the system, and energetically and psychologically they are very well positioned and arranged, so there doesn't there's no extra friction that is absolutely unnecessary, because we have a lot to deal with already.
So we keep mentioning systemic, and I obviously know you as a family constellation facilitator, and I am aware of what constellations are. But for someone who has no idea, what would you say? How would you describe what is family constellations?
I will go a little bit into the history, but very briefly, because we're talking about tribes and we'll talk about life in community, but not in the community in the sense that people would live together on the land and everybody would know everyone, and we would walk, for example, to drink some water from the spring or to pick some fruits, and we would meet different people and say like, hey, how are you doing? How is your day going? Oh, we'll go and hug. So it's a completely different lifestyle. And Family Constellation emerged from an African tribe called the Zulu tribe, where the elders of the tribe, they would simply observe what was happening with their people. And they realized, for example, when somebody was experiencing some sort of trouble, whatever the trouble might have been, maybe upset, depression, disease, having a bad attitude or unhealthy behavior, they would not look at the person with the eyes of like, oh, there's something wrong with the person, like there's something that is out of control in the person. They would think how the system, meaning the entire community, the entire tribe, it's impacting this. How is this person's relationship to their ancestors, being their parents, grandparents, aunties, uncles? Like, what is the dynamic from a zoomed out perspective? So the founder of Constellations lived with this tribe for 16 years. I remember, yeah, and he developed this method. So it's a therapeutic modality that works with putting in this sort of like in a play, yeah, but is let's say we're in a room together, and let's say you want to work on a theme, maybe partner, maybe romantic, maybe you feel like you have a block, you have a, I don't know, a fear that is unreasonable and it just keeps looping, and you worked on it so many times and you still don't understand where is this coming from. Then we're going to bring different people from the group, yeah, as representative for elements of whatever is happening for you. And it's a very experiential thing. Like I would probably talk about it 20 minutes, like how it looks like and how we perform this entire thing and why is this beneficial. But you know it and I know it, and every single person that felt the call to go to Family Constellations and they actually listened to the call and they had the experience, they know it's something that we can describe, but the description compared to the experience itself is just very, very different. You know, it's almost the map is not the territory. So it is a method that works with our unconscious, and it brings to the surface to be acknowledged dynamics, blocks, fears, and entanglements within ourselves and our own psyche, but also whatever happened in our family history with our parents, grandparents, aunties, uncles, etc. They're still affecting us because, let's say, people who've been in war, it's demonstrated that one or two generations after, the children will have some sort of complex trauma, like some sort of like CTPTSD or anxiety or fear or night terrors or whatever. And maybe they are living a very nice life. Maybe their parents, they've been amazing. And however, they're still manifesting certain symptoms or certain life experiences. So it's known that the stress that an ancestor, whatever 2 generations or 3 generations or last generation lived, still lives in their body. And if they're not able to process that fully, then the brain is going to download that in their subconscious mind. So they're still, available, for life and to do whatever they need to do, because otherwise they'll be ruminating and like going over things like why my neighbor stole my cow, for example, or my sheep or whatever. So they will go into that and they will the brain will not have the energy to keep them safe, because our brain is constantly scanning for danger, constantly looking around to see if everything is okay. So if I would be concerned with my process and my trauma and I will cross the street, I might risk to die, to be hit by a car in this day and age. Back in the days, there were tigers and lions and different other tribes attacking themselves. So it's kind of like the same thing. It's just in a different timeline. Whereas the brain is going to say like, okay, you had 1 night or 2 nights sleep, you had 2, 3, 4 days to process this. There's still stuff unprocessed. I'm going to download this in your subconscious. So I wake up, I feel better. I don't feel so tragically sad about something that happened with my ex-boyfriend, for example. Yeah. And then my brain has the ability and the energy to pay attention when I'm crossing the street to actually see the car so I don't die. But that stays in our subconscious. And if I'm not addressing that and I'll have a child, most likely, and from my studies, what I know, what I practice is that between 0 and 9, every single child that manifests asthma, allergies, tummy issues, whatever, it doesn't matter what it is, skin rashes, is actually the unprocessed remains from their parents, is what they experience in the womb in the 0 to 9 months, and also the few months, I would say 9 months before conception. So all of that information is stored in our subconscious, and it's up to us if we are going to pass down that load of stuff that is not going to support the new generation to live freely and easily. So we can look at it by using something like Family Constellation, for example, and we can process that. So it's freeing us and also it's freeing the next generations.
Being someone who had the ability to work with and observe people's questions, problems, issues, what do you see? What are the recurring patterns? What are people struggling with? What is an issue that just keeps coming back?
Mm-hmm. Probably the most common one, and I would say the most important one, is being disconnected from our inner parts, from our internal family system. I see this again and again and again and again and again, because when anybody had any sort of shock, it doesn't have to be something big. Yeah, it could be just a big scare. It could be, I don't know, the child felt abandoned because mother went to a wedding for a couple of hours and she came back home. But for the baby's brain, if the baby was 2, 3 years old, it was terrible. It was like, that's it. My life is going to end. My mom left for 3 hours. I'm done. Yeah, I don't have my attachment figure, my safety net. So when we experience this kind of, or when a child is constantly put down by the parent, oh, what do you know about this? Oh, but yeah, and again, it's not malicious from the parent, but it's not conscious either. It's not well intended either. You know, it's something that repeatedly over time is going to create fractures in the child's psyche. Or let's say the child is expressing emotions and the child doesn't know how to express emotions, and probably they'll throw a tantrum, they're going to scream. If the parent screams back at the child, it's like, what's wrong with you? What do you want? What do you want me to do now? Oh, that is so unsafe. Yeah, and like it's just going to send them in a spiral of anger and freeze and inadequacy. There's something wrong with me. Also, if the parent is not okay, it could be depressed. It could be they're worried about finances. It could be so many things. The child is going to look at mom and dad and say, I have to have healthy, happy parents. And if they're not happy and healthy, then it must be about me. It must be that I did something wrong. So my mom's state of whatever, you know, like her emotional state, her mental state is going to impact me as a child. My dad's mental state and emotional state is going to impact me as a child. So every single time we had these experiences, it was like a tear in our psyche. It was like, I don't know what to do, and I have too much pain in the situation. There's like too much for me to bear. So our psyche is just going to fragment. So we are going to have a million, like a multitude of parts, yeah, traumatized parts, surviving parts, and also healthy parts. There's always going to be a healthy part out of every single situation. So it's like we're having a bowl and we're just chopping the bowl, but every single segment, yeah, it's always going to have a healthy part, a survival part, and a traumatized part. And each healthy part from here is always going to be connected to our self with capital S, like our healthy self. So what I see in most often is that no matter what are we working on, it doesn't matter if the person comes and says, I want a better relationship, I want more money, I want more success, I want to see myself beautiful, I don't trust myself, I would like to trust myself, whatever it is going to go to either one or two places. A systemic that has to a connection to mom, dad, grandparents, grandparents, somebody from our family line. Yeah, it could be even unborn siblings, either aborted or miscarried or stillbirth or whatever, because there were, again, it was not a full process of grieving. Yeah, it was like shock, and that was it. The stages of grief, they were not processed. So again, the information in the subconscious, and a child is going to manifest that. So it's either going to be ancestral systemic issue, or it's going to be an inner systemic issue. And I've seen it many times. Most of the times, these kind of create a separation from our sense of self. It kind of dissolves our essence, our who we really are, and it creates this confusion and this inability to be in healthy contact with our parts. And we are going to bring mechanisms like criticism, perfectionism, all sorts of adaptation mechanisms. And all of these were helpful at the time. They were like really beneficial. But a big issue is that people are not able to be in healthy contact with themselves. And even for me, like, I still catch myself being unconscious or not having patience with my inner child. I do have patience now a lot, but with other parts, yeah, I might say like, oh shoot, I shouldn't have done that, or oh, I record this thing and I shouldn't say that. I should have said it differently. That is still a very mild form of abuse or criticism, but there's something. So this is very, very common, like this connection, this frozen aspects. Like we have so many frozen emotions in ourselves, and not only that, but also our perception. This is another, I mean, like this comes up in every single session. Our perception, we formed a specific perception that even our brain found all of the reasons why that thing is the way it is. Yeah, but we are not seeing everything clearly. So that's another issue. We somehow look at life from the perception that we formed when we're 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. And that, again, it lies in our subconscious, and therefore we're still experiencing life through that lens. And it's really, really important to shift the perception and see like there's also another possibility. There's multiple possibilities and multiple opportunities. So that's something I'm still navigating, and I'm wondering myself every day. I'm questioning like, how am I seeing? What am I seeing? And how can I shift perception in a way that is going to be conducive to a better life? And it is a fascinating thing that seems so simple, and yet is just so powerful.
So if a common issue is that we are disconnected from our own psychological parts, our internal family system, and we are having a hard time being locked into one perception, what is the way out? How can we live a more integrated life and be in contact with those parts?
A good place to start is working with our inner child. And for the longest of time, I thought to myself, this is just nonsense. Are you kidding me? Why I'd really have to do such thing? It doesn't make any sense. I was just so resistant to it. Like for the whole time, I was like, man, nah, no. Yeah, and then again, it's the perception. Yeah, it's the perception that I'm supposed to be somebody and having a specific social position, a specific career, a specific attitude, a specific way of being. All of the stuff, all of those perceptions, they are just illusionary. They're just constructs. They're not even real. And I had a hard time leaning into this idea of connecting to my inner child. It felt something so alien to me and just so far out and so just. I would speak about aliens like real extraterrestrials. I would have a conversation about that rather than talking about the inner child. But the moment when I started out of desperation, I didn't get to that point because I decided one day that I'm going to do an inner child, therapy or course. No, it was literally because I was bawling my eyes and I was having fights with my mom and fights with my dad. And I still felt immature internally. I was like, why do I get triggered? Why I get so upset? Why if I have such a hard time in this situation, in that situation? Why I still don't have the partner that I love, or I don't even have the courage to have a partner. Like something must be wrong with me. Something is completely off. So the moment when out of desperation, I went to therapy and it doesn't mean that we have to go to therapy necessarily, but it's really important to find a way to connect to our inner child, reading a book, listening to podcasts, but it's really important to actually connect with it and not just learning about it. Like that's the game changer. It's really important to close our eyes or have a stuffed animal that we invested. It's like we gave the role, like you represent my inner child, and be in a relationship to that, be in communication with that, because I had a big struggle not feeling a woman because my inner girl was just throwing toys out of the basket and throwing tantrums, and I didn't know what to do, and I was like ping-ponging between these two parts, and I was like, oh gosh, like what is going on here? So that was probably the most healing, not the most, one of the most healing experiences I had in my life, to connect to my inner child. And I noticed that the more I was doing that and the more I was creating that relationship, because it's not enough just to connect here and there and maybe this Christmas and next year. No, it was a consistent, ongoing thing. And I could not go away anyways, because every single time I would feel a bit off, or there's a conflict with somebody or a trigger or any of that. Yeah, I was feeling energetically something is out of place. Most likely it was taking me to that. So I was being reminded all the time. And that was just such I don't know, a completely different reality opened up for me when I got to the point in which my inner child started to feel safe with me and have this relationship that my inner child knew that I'm there, I'm present, and she can count on me. And no matter what happens, no matter who is going to come into my life, no matter how many cool friends I'm going to have, or the new partner that is going to come through, I will still be there. I'm not going to abandon this child. So I became the mother I never had. And in this process, I've learned a lot about mothering and parenting and what it means to be a functional and a healthy mother, and the energetics behind it. And yeah, definitely connection to the inner child is really, really important. Also, what I found is super supportive is community. And when I say community, it's not any kind of community, not necessarily go to drumming circles together and having few conversations and go back home, or go to tea parties or tea ceremonies. Not like community when we can actually have a consistent dynamic yeah, a consistent dynamic that we see each other, or we're in touch with each other every couple of days or once a week or once 2 weeks, but over longer periods of time. So our nervous system and our brain starts to record the other person as being safe, starts to experience like different situations. Maybe sometimes there are going to be conflicts. Maybe sometimes things are not going to always going to be pinky and fluffy and whatever. But how we repair, it's always going to give us like a new rewiring, like a new imprinting. So it's really important to have this kind of like sustainable community, and it doesn't have to be big. It can be just a bunch of people, but as long as we start to peel the layers and the walls and the shadows of our inauthenticity, and the more we express our authenticity, but also it has to be in an environment, in a place that is gradual, is titrated. It's not like I'm just going to come to this like sharing circle or like this whatever, thing, and I'm just going to vomit my life, and I'm going to be extremely vulnerable, and then we're going to have a trauma bond, and 2 weeks later it's going to be a mess. Not that way. Not, don't do that. It's about like consistency. Let's tiptoe if it's necessary. It's fine. We're all human beings, because it's really important to see that I'm no different than you, and you're not different than somebody else, and we're not different. That we all have struggles, we all have fears, we all have insecurities, we all have all sorts of like issues. Yeah. And actually those issues will bring us together, and not in a form of victimizing each other together, but in a form of like, I see you and you see me, and I'm not so alone in my experience, and you're not so alone in your experience, and perhaps we can hold each other's hands to take another step forward. So that's another thing that I find is super supportive. And therapy, I absolutely recommend therapy, but this is very debatable. Some people think it's useful, other people think it's not. I believe it's part of when it's actually the therapy coming in. If I have a level of emotional maturity and an attitude of like, I'm going to go to this thing and see what can I get out of it, and I'm allowing for a new perspective to come through, therapy can be very supportive. If from the get-go I say like, no, this must be shit, it's not going to do much to me, I mean, like, I'm not going to go and talk to this stranger, it's not going to work. It's very important, the level of openness and allowance, and how much an individual can extract out of a situation. It can be 80% bad, but we can always think the 20% good and make something good with it. So it's one of those things. It's something that everybody has to try and see if this is the right time and the right moment. I love constellations. Yeah, it's either in constellations with our internal parts or the family constellations. They are incredibly beneficial, especially not only our own issues and themes, because there's like this full rewiring of an event. It doesn't matter if the event happened 3 generations back or happened for us in this life, or it is just has this ability to rewire, yeah, like, and bring to surface whatever was unconscious and rewire the situation. And it's almost like there's a completion about it. It's almost like it's not something reversible, it's something irreversible. Like, we do something and it's going to stay that way, because what it does, it kind of brings the system back to its original blueprint before the trauma happened, before the whatever the difficulty was there. There was a balance, and the balance was disrupted. But when we bring it back to balance, it's almost like the disruption never happened. Like, it's kind of restoring the blueprint of the family system or the person. And the constellations with our inner parts as well is just very beautiful and very powerful. And not only this, but also it helps us to reconnect to our nervous system. It teaches us very gently and slowly how to breathe deeper, how to be more present, how to be more intuitive. Yeah, it's kind of like allowing us to step in spaces of surrender, of femininity, of receptivity. It just offers like such a um, wide benefits just by participation, and not necessarily somebody that's working a theme individually. And also there's the sense of community, because there is, especially the people who are coming again and again and again. Even when I go to 4 hours from here, I drive and I go to Family Constellations, and I do it every 2 or 3 months. Every single time I see people that I've seen before. And as soon as I see them, there's this feeling of I'm okay here. I belong to this place. I'm safe. It's okay. It might be intense. It might not be intense, but we're going to have a good day. And even for those couple of hours, whatever, how many hours we're in that space together, there's this sense of, I see you and I know you see me. And that's just like so healing in itself. And that's why I love it. And of course, there are all sorts of other modalities. Him is also very supportive, but I believe that the most supportive things is not like one-off kind of solutions, is consistence, and it's important for us to also understand and find ways in which we are becoming more comfortable with feeling. Feeling is such an important part, and you know that it was another revelation and probably the shock of my life. I thought like, but I'm feeling like, what do you mean? I'm not feeling. I am feeling, like, look at me, I'm experiencing sadness, and I'm experiencing pain. I'm experiencing joy. I'm experiencing a range of emotions, but I was actually experiencing only the peaks of like it was just so much in my system at that point that I'll break down crying, or it was something that was so joyful, but it was joyful because it was something that I really, really wanted, or something that I waited for so long, or it was some adrenaline seeking experience that obviously would give me that joy. But I learned with time that I was actually pretty disconnected, and that those are just like overloads in my system. Actually, it's very important to feel the subtleties, which I was completely disconnected from. So it's nervous system regulation. Oh, it has to be taught in schools. Like, we should not begin life without learning about sexual education and nervous system regulation. I would start there. But obviously, and for us, it's the same. Nervous system regulation, sexual education. And when I say sexual education, the kind of like feminine masculine dynamics and polarities and stuff like that, not, of course, all the biological things as well, but more than just biology, like the entire system that goes with that.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed. You mentioned trauma bond, and it really perked up my ears because I've been in those spaces, attended those self-development courses and programs, and been to those sharing circles where I believe the different methodologies are working for different people. And I don't want to discredit or discount anything, but there are certain spaces that we're going more towards the exposure therapy style of dealing with issues and traumas. And I've been to one very specific event in my life that was implementing more of this, let you experience your trauma to the extent that it is. And there was an element of discrediting the experience that I had, that just get over it, just expose yourself to the thing that you're most afraid of. And it became a hugely traumatic experience for me. And that's what I found through constellations, that it was just after about 10 years of trial and error, it was the methodology that worked for me and still works for me. And through this work, I experience myself as a healthier person than ever before. So speak to it a little. How is a constellation space different from the trauma bond experiences that some spaces create?
Wow, that's a lot. Um, well, it's first of all is different because it's experiential. But within the experience is not similar to any those places where we just do a dance or we tap certain body parts, or we go into meditation and we bring forward the memory and we start punching a pillow and screaming. or we do whatever, and at the end we do a long sharing circle and we share about our experiences in our life, and we do have the sense of belonging, or the sense of reciprocity, but it's not really helpful. Yeah, maybe it is helpful to kind of, if you're having a pressure cooker and then you're pressing the button and some steam goes out in one go, that obviously helps, but it's that kind of experience. Whereas a family constellation, what I love about this method is kind of it puts together in this pot, all of the things that I've learned about attachment trauma, about nervous system regulation, is just a method that is multidimensional and multi-layered, and it's not unidirectional, bidirectional, just like it's just so well-rounded. And so it's an experiential thing, but within this experience, we, for example, the person that's working a theme is not directly involved. There's other people representing the person, the client, let's say, and also different aspects of their life or family system. So they're an observer. Therefore, through the active observation, the intensity of whatever's happening there is not going to be so intense. Because sometimes we're afraid, like, I know that I have to step through the fire at some point if I'm afraid of the fire. It doesn't really, like, that's the traumatizing part. Yeah, it's bringing more trauma. So a family constellation is beautiful that the client per se, it's observing its own constellation, its own psyche, its own family members. So it is present and connected, but at the same time, the load of the sensations is not on them. So that's very helpful because it is titrating. And at the same time, it's very beneficial for everybody that is in the space because it's titrating for everyone. And we only represent things that there's a connection, we have a connection with, something that we experienced or something that a person that we were in a relationship with experienced. And by us experiencing that kind of personality or energy or belief system in us, then we understand how it was for that person in our 20s when we had this relationship with so and so, and they did certain things, they said some things to us, where now we have a different perspective. We're kind of like seeing things from their lens and our lens at the same time, and we're able to have this opposing realities or even conflicting realities valid at the same time. And then we can look at them without being caught up in the pain or in the resentment or in, I should have done it differently. So there's this titration that happens for everybody, which I believe is just so important. And also it is more than evident that at the end of each session, we are constantly touched by very similar things. So the mirroring thing happened. Like we don't even have to be too concerned about our mirror neurons. they're active all the time, and they're happening in the session, they're operating. So we look at the situation. It could be an observer, it could be nobody that's representing or working anything. They could just be in the space and they are looking, and their entire reticular system is being activated, and it's like, oh my gosh, like I'm seeing things so differently. So there's this shift in perspective that doesn't happen forcefully. It's not something that we set the mind to do. Like, it's not a mindset kind of thing. It is not something that we rush in any way, shape, or form. We don't speed things up, and we pace like in a way that is sustainable for the client and also for the group. So all of the positive aspects of circles, the belonging is there. Yeah, we are a circle technology. We always imagine we are in a circle. If we would be in a physical room, we would sit in a circle. So we have this like circular consciousness and the circle technology, and automatically there's this realization of like, no matter what happened in my life, no matter what I experienced, no matter how hard it was, I'm not alone. Like, look at these people. Yeah. And it's not because they are telling their stories, because the story is being revealed without anybody doing anything special. And also there's this, there's a non-hierarchical environment, because nobody is better than anybody. I cannot do constellation without the client. I cannot do constellation without the representatives or the observers. The client cannot have a session if me or the observers would, or the representative would be there, and the representatives would not have anything to experience with and play with if the client and the facilitator would not be there. So there's this, I don't know, this like amazing symbiosis of everybody's giving something into the space and everybody's receiving something from the space at all times. And there's no hierarchy. Even me as a facilitator, my duty is to hold the space, but actually it's not even that much that I'm doing, because there's the intelligence of the field that is creating the experience, and also the intelligence and the openness and the presence of the representatives. So it's not like I cannot control much. There are certain things I have some control on, and of course the power of attention is important, but more so it's a co-creative experience. Like, the way it looks like and the way it feels like is because everybody is contributing to something, and everybody's getting something in return. And it's a how do you call it, when you're directing? Yeah, nobody's directing anything. So it's not a prescription. It's not something that it's on the schedule and we agreed we're going to do this and this and this and this. It's just so, I don't know, fluid, flowy, and mysterious, that nobody ever knows what's going to happen there, how it's going to look like, what learnings are we going to receive, how, like, we are fully present. And yes, it is developing this sense of presence like nothing else I experienced. Yeah, because even in meditation, our thoughts are still like running away sometimes, and we have to pull them back. Whereas here, there's an engagement and engaged detachment. Yeah, like we're engaged, but also kind of detached in a way. And there's this perfect dance of like being present, being with myself and being present with the situation, and being with myself and being present with the situation. So there's a lot of rewiring that happens at all times, because I'm learning to feel myself, to feel my sensations as an observer, as a facilitator, as a client, but especially as entities and the facilitator. For the client, like they could be more in their heads, or like, oh my God, what's going on? In that kind of space. But for us, the representatives and the facilitator is, how can I be with myself? How can I be in contact with myself and present with myself, and at the same time fully present and in contact with everything that's happening here? So it feels like all the theory that I read in books and all the, I don't know how many hours of podcasts is just being served to us, is being offered to us, is being given to us in this space. And it's kind of like eliminating all of the other problems and issues in spiritual communities or in other therapeutic spaces where there's projection going on, when the therapist should be this or should be that, or I was, I don't know, vulnerable with you and you didn't mirror me in the way that I want to be mirrored. And all, like, none of that or most of those things are not actually present in the space, just because the method is just genius in the way that it looks like or it's being conducted. That, yeah, it's fascinating. And I don't know if I necessarily answered to your question, but
You did, and it's fascinating for me as well, because in traditional therapeutic spaces, and if therapy works for people, I'm very happy. Personally, for me, it didn't work because I was missing this community aspect. That's what I needed. I didn't feel comfortable in a setting where I just unconsciously projected parental responsibilities onto the therapist or the coach or somebody who's there to facilitate a session. And I'm building my relationship with my inner child. I was very resistant to look at my own family system. So it's been a huge, and this method was the only thing that brought me out of my shell and provided me the safety and the security to look at the issues that are holding me back in my life. And at the same time, not making me feel like I'm in an unsafe space while I'm trying to work through my problems. But I'm still only just at the very beginning of building a relationship with my internal parts. So how is your relation? What have you discovered? How is your relationship with your inner child? What have you discovered through your own connection?
I discovered, first of all, that I can finally grow up. As I said earlier, I had this impression that there's still an immature part of me. And it's almost like I was feeling that I'm not prepared to deal with the world. I was not able to show up. I was holding myself back because I knew and I felt like this part of me was just so present and like so in my face in so many ways that I was having this idea that I cannot be a grown up, I cannot be a full adult, I cannot be responsible, I cannot trust myself in many situations because I have this part and I don't know what's going to happen and when it's going to throw a tantrum or when it's going to get upset or any all those things along those lines. So yeah, for me, it was very supportive to actually feel that I have the resources to finally grow. So it just gave me, it put me in contact with my inner resources, things that I didn't know they were inside of me, things I didn't even fathom that is possible. Because for whatever reason, maybe it's just me or maybe it's like it's a more general thing, I thought that I just don't have what it takes and I don't have the skills and I don't have the inner power and I don't have X, Y, Z things. But this connection helped me also reconnect or connect for the first time with inner resources. It helped me create a more relaxed inner state and a like more playful attitude and not childlike, but not childish, but childlike. Because before I was childish, I was like, whereas like, wait, there's another form of that is childlike, and it's not necessarily, no, impulsive or angry without any reason or just out of control, or in all of the ways that my inner child used to behave. So I started liking this state and this experience of like being childlike and having more access to life force, more access to joy, more access to a more easeful inner experience. And also it gave me this sense that I can finally relax and I don't have this jittery sensation in my system, because finally this crazy child is not stirring at the wheel. He feels like it's okay, it's there on the seat, has like the seatbelt on. I'm in communication with the inner child. I'm asking, like, do you need a comfort break? Do you need tea? Do you need water? Are you okay? Also, the child is not even nagging me. I used to think that my inner child was nagging me, but actually it was not. It was paying me attention, but making me pay attention. But I don't feel it's nagging me, and it still comes out, but it comes out in the sense of, hey, that's not really nice. Like, that's not good for you. You're having something to look at. And it's not in that tantrumy way. It's more in a pay attention kind of way. So it is laid out in my relationships in a way that helped me deal with confrontation, with conflict, with having different reality or opposing realities valid at the same time. Situations in which I was hurt and my friend was hurt, and she hurted me and I hurted her, and at the same time I could see where, we were both right from our perspective, and I'm not seeing things so black and white like I used to. I used to see things very black and white. So now I see more of the spectrum, and I'm pretty sure there's much more. I feel like I'm just laying down the foundation. I'm not even tapping into like the clarity of the, like, how wide the spectrum is. It's almost like now we are in communication, we have a relationship, and I'm not so afraid. I feel more stable within myself, and more confident that we can continue this path. We can continue on this path, and we can be successful on this path. But there's so much more. Like, I know this is just the very, very beginning of this journey.
I find it very interesting and such a universal experience that when we are actually children, when we're physically children, we rush towards growing up. And then there's a gap that happens in our early years when we experience a disconnection from that childlike part somehow. But it seems like that inner childlike part stays in the driver's seat no matter what. And it commands our attention to go back and rediscover that sense of vitality, that imagination, that inspiration, that connection with something that we are all looking for. And without that inner child, without the connection with our own inner child, it seems like we are struggling to find that meaningful connection that we're seeking. So what would you say, like, in your opinion, what happens to us as children, as we're growing up? What happens to us that severs that connection or that disrupts that connection?
Well, so much happens. It depends now. Probably for different people on the planet, this is different. But for example, religious programming being one of them. In my case, that was definitely my case, and I know many people experience this. Don't do this because it's out of order. Don't say that because it's a sin. We have to think this way. We have to behave this way. And I remember when I was young, I was very free, like a very free spirit. And I didn't have this concept of shame, of sin, of things like those. And I was so programmed with those things, and I was so afraid and ashamed that I had, and I'm not even probably scratching the surface. Again, the more I go into these things, like the more I see how deeply it shut me down, because I was not able to express, I was not able to be authentic. I had to bend myself and twist and do things and kind of mold myself into what society expected from me. And in this way, the society that was influenced and was speaking from this religious perspective, but also larger communities or societies. Yeah, it depends where we are in the world. For me, it was maybe the scarcity. Being an ex-communist country was about, what if we're not going to have? What if we're not going to have enough? What if something bad will happen? What if, what if, what if? It was always about this what ifs. So I remember I was having ideas, like business ideas after the communist revolution. And I was saying like, okay, let's open this and let's do this business and let's do that. And my parents like, but that's crazy. Like, you are such a child, they have no idea. And all of my business ideas now, they are very well, very successful, and it took years for them to show up. Like, so I was kind of ahead of the times with few years, a decade. And now I look at those places and I'm thinking to myself, if I would only have somebody to see the vision and support me in that vision, we would be in a complete different space, me and my family, and probably whoever would help me with that. Yeah, maybe they were family friends, maybe, who knows, my, people that my parents knew at that time. It's like, okay, like this child has this idea. But see, this is also the adult's perspective of what a child, like a child doesn't know. So that's definitely like creating a lot of inadequacy. I believe the attitude that the adults, the grown-ups, because adults is too much said for many of the people walking in bigger bodies. They are grown-ups and they look at children not by seeing children through the lens of possibility and the lens of who is this being and who can this being become. Yeah, like how can I create an environment and how can I see this person, this like new forming person, as a being full of potential and ideas and creativity that I don't have access to because of whatever happened for me. But at the same time, I see this issue a lot, the difficulty that people have just because they were programmed and they were faced with limitations and they were faced with whatever hardship, they will project that onto children. So the newer generations have, every single new generation has possibilities that the one before never had and never will have. But if I will get stubborn wanting so much to hold on to the reality I experienced as being the only reality, then I see this creating a lot of issues in these children, and they cannot develop, and their trust in themselves is being altered a lot. I see a lot of, look at the world right now, people don't know who they are. They look at whatever magazines and TV stars and pop stars and stuff like that because they don't know their identity. But their identity is being chipped and is being watered down because they didn't have the support when they were young. So grown-ups are not willing to allow this new beings to develop and have their autonomy and be different. Yeah, different doesn't mean bad. It's just they're projecting so much of their fears and so much of their limitations onto these new beings, and the children, they are like stunted in their development, and that's happening in so many ways, in just like so many ways.
If you could teach one thing to every single human being, but especially every single parent on this planet, to make that parent-child relationship healthier, what would that thing be?
Attunement. And I know that's like a wide, it just like so much go underneath that. But for example, yeah, we are having this conversation, and probably I'm not going to start shouting at you just because you asked me something, or maybe I'm going to share something a little bit more emotional. Probably you're not going to start singing a happy song. And this is really, really important to kind of like have the awareness, and attunement probably can be translated through very simple terms, like I'm aware of how I'm feeling right now. Yeah, like what is my energy level? Am I sleepy? Am I present? Am I kind of disconnected a little bit or not? Do I enjoy this conversation? Do I give a sign that, like, am I listening to my internal environment? Like, am I comfortable in this? Am I comfortable in this situation? And let's say I'm not, yeah. And let's say this is not a recorded session, and we're just having a conversation. We just met and we're having a conversation. So it's really important to first have the attunement with myself. Do I need a break? Do I need, like, is too much information that I'm being exposed to? Do I need to have a 5 minutes walk and come back to the situation? And that's teaching us how to be attuned to other people. Yeah, to kind of like how to understand or to sense what state are you in, and how is this conversation going to look like or feel like. We're not going to be talking about, whatever holidays right now. Yeah, it's not that kind of setting. And like this is very, very important with children, because the parents, they tend to be a lot in their heads and busy with providing and making sure everything is okay and security. And at the same time, they're doing their best, but at the same time, they're not attuned to their children. Yeah, maybe the child came and is a little bit sad that something happened at school. If the mom is going to say like, come on, clothes down, now we go in and wash your hands and come to dinner, and like, instead of actually connecting to them and say, hey, how was your day? And not just ask, how was your day, just to tick the box, but really engaged, like to be engaged with that, like, hey, how are you? And be attuned in the sense of like, maybe the child is not ready yet to say, he's maybe not ready to share whatever is happening for them. But if the parent is attuned, they'll be like, okay, so there's a little bit of resistance. Maybe he's sad, maybe he's afraid. So they're going to create some sort of like safety. Yeah. And then maybe the child is going to come in half an hour to say something, or maybe they're going to say it there in that moment. But it's very, very important to have that attunement, because in my case, I wanted to go to my mom and dad and tell them things, for example. And if they were not attuned, it shut me down. And I know that happens with anybody, with friendships, partners, it doesn't matter what kind of setting, is always going to happen. Every single time when somebody gets like, I didn't like that, or gets a little bit upset, or that's lack of attunement. Yeah, most of the lack of attunement. So people will be like, what is that about? Like, this is what it's about. Yeah, like when we are feeling that we're not fully received, or we're understood, or we're misunderstood, or whatever happens that is kind of like giving us like the icky feeling, that is somehow lack of attunement with ourselves. Is something that we did to ourselves. We crossed our own boundaries. We didn't pay attention to the signals of our body, whatever, or is in relation to somebody else. So if there's one thing I would teach everybody, is this level of presence and the minimum, just basic attunement. And that's already going to change a lot.
How can, especially parents who feel already overwhelmed or exhausted, how can parents learn or practice attunement? What does that look like?
By doing very simple things. Just simple things. Yeah. And it first starts with awareness, but let's say I've been there when I was not able to even be aware. I was just running 100 miles per hour. I was just like, go, 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 go. I will crash in the evening. So what it helped me a lot, and it changed my life over time, it was to pay attention to my breath. Nothing fancy, no meditation, no breath work, nothing complicated, nothing that takes I don't know how long. I would put alarms, or I will have just triggers. Let's say every single time I will drink water, I will just breathe 3 times really deeply. I will have a sip of water, and I will breathe 3 times again. Every single time I will wash my hands, every single time I will have water running my hands, I would breathe. Yeah. And sometimes I would wash dishes, and that would be something longer, where I would be in the shower, and that would be like longer than 1 or 2 or 3 breaths. So that helped my system. Yeah. For example, I had another one when I would be in traffic at the stoplight. Instead of like banging and, going on my phone and whatever, now I can do that and I can breathe at the same time. So don't judge me for it. But at the time, I was breathing. I was like, okay, everything is okay. Yeah, I can even talk to myself. Affirmations, though I'm not a big fan of those, because if I'm not feeling safe, I can say to myself that I'm feeling safe. And it's kind of like not helpful. So just breathing is so, so, so important. And stuff like IOPT, yeah, internally system, like our internally system constellations, any sort of like nervous system regulation techniques, like very simple ones, containment, yeah, holding ourselves. And I know that sounds like, well, I'm so freaking agitated and I'm like so anxious. What do I do? Jump, yeah, skip, like skip for a couple of meters or jump on the spot. So they're very, very simple things, but people are sometimes afraid of the simple things, and they're like, that's too simple to work. I don't think that's going to do anything good to me. I was like, well, that's exactly why work, because it is so simple, and we are just so attached to complicated things, and we are not even giving a chance to the simple things. So I would invite everybody to do very simple things. Yeah, breathing deeply as much as possible, set an alarm, respect circadian rhythms, and moving the body to a degree that helps us with hormones and stuff like that, and working with this inner parts, and this in time is going to bring us to where we want to be. They're not like quick fixes. It's not something that we do once. It's not one plant medicine retreat that people have for one night and their life is going to change. I did that, doesn't work. No, it could be supportive to an extent, but very, very little in the grand schemes of things. But simple things like this, breathing, having a 1 or 2 or 3 safely attached friends, yeah, people that I can go and I can speak to you vulnerably and say, Alex, I'm feeling like this, and I know you're not going to judge me. Yeah, I know I don't have to guard myself in any way. And of course, I understand it's not something available for everybody, and it's something that has to be built. And I fucked it up in the past. I made mistakes. Things went wrong in my relationships, and I've learned something each time that led me to where I am today. So now, and this is really important, it's a process. It's not going to shift overnight. It's not going to be like, I'm doing this retreat or these 5 sessions, and there's no miracle cure for anything. So we have to, everybody, I would love that every single being on planet Earth would be more comfortable with the idea that things will take as long as they need to take. Not to have even an idea about how long is this long? Is it 2 months or is 2 years? We don't know. It doesn't even matter, because when you get on the other side, yeah, like, do I even think like how long it took me? Yeah, sometimes I do, but it's just like very, very sporadically. For me, the most important thing is to be here, where I'm right now. And this is something I was not having access to, not even like 2 or 3 years ago, I guess. So yeah, simple things and the understanding that there is a process, and it doesn't mean that what are we doing does not work. It's about keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it, and not go into a place of judgment. I did this for 3 months and it didn't work. Maybe we have to do it for 1 year and 3 months. But if you're not going to get to the 1 year and 3 months, you're never going to find out. And sometimes, yeah, some things do not work, but at least give it a go, and give. It's very, very important that for me to give myself permission to try something. And maybe I'm not gonna like it, yeah, but I give it a go, and I go to or try that for like a couple of times, and I say, okay, I don't think it's for me. And I'm not going to be upset that I invested some time or some money into that. At least I know that that thing is not actually for me right now. It might be for me in the future, but at least I have an idea. And again, I'm not going to box it, or I'm going to say like, this is horrible and I'm never going to do this again. I mean, like, probably there are some situations like those. But as I said, I believe we can always extract from everything that we ever experienced whatever is good. We can extract that and we can leave the rest, and we can use that. It's almost like I'm saying I'm having like a backpack and I'm putting all of these pieces, but over time, like, there's this huge, I don't know, body of intelligence, of experience, of wisdom that comes from all those tiny experiences that I pieced together over time. So yeah, I learned, especially lately, to see things that way, and it's very, very helpful. But start with breathing and very simple nervous system regulation.
I can definitely say that it hasn't been an easy thing for me, because it's a conscious practice to keep repeating even these simple things, but it is something that I'm practicing and something that I'm getting better at incrementally. Would you have, like, along your journey of building your relationship with your inner child and building a better, healthier relationship within your family, did you have any books or any fictional characters or fictional relationships where you got inspiration from that you can recommend, where you would see that, oh, this shifted something in me, or this spoke to me?
Books. I mean, there are a couple of books. Discovering the Inner Mother is one of them. Children of Emotionally Mature Parents was a very, very good one. There's a book written by a Hungarian author, Hungarian-Romanian. It's called The Invisible Child, but I don't think it's translated in many other languages. It's a fantastic book. And probably there are more of along those lines. I don't remember now names or titles, but for sure these were very, very impactful for me. But also just learning about childhood developmental stages in general. It doesn't matter if it's Gabor Mate, if it's through relationship lens, like, I don't know, Diane Polar Heller, which is like talks about attachment trauma, or Herval Hendricks. All of these people, basically, no matter where I went in the last couple of years, it took me back to the same principle of like this connection with the inner child and how important that is. In terms of fictional characters, I used to watch Sailor Moon and I was obsessed with it. But not but she was like very much childlike. She had a very, very childlike energy, and also this very empowered. She was kind of, and maybe I was just like super influenced by this, because that's exactly how I felt. Like 1 second I was just flower power, like completely like gone in my world. I had no idea what's going on. Pretty ignorant sometimes, or very delusional, or having this like magical thinking. And sometimes this aspect would prevent the other aspect of embodiment and empowerment to come through. So it feels like now it's, oh wow, I definitely took on the characteristics. So probably there was like an inner battle over a long time. So other than that, I don't remember anything significant that influenced me. But now I see the reflection from this character in my life, and how it played out in my psyche. And I'm absolutely shocked to the realization now, to see how much of that is actually happened for me internally. Um, yeah, but and the most significant things are actually the methods, because and what got me the closest to my inner child was my first constellation with the inner parts. And my first session, the first session I had the constellation with my inner parts. And when I saw the state in which my inner child was, like the freeze and the terror and the panic, and how the representative for my inner child was saying, I want my mother, I want my mother, I want my mother. And nothing will calm this inner child down. And it would have been, I guess it was in utero, around 7, 8 months, or either, yeah, I think it was in utero. But that was the moment when something shifted in my brain, because I was aware I was already doing inner child work at that point. Yeah, but I was kind of like falling off the tracks or forgetting about it. And I'll remember only when I will get triggered or I will get annoyed about something. And that was the moment when, after that session, I went and I bought myself a stuffed animal. And I set the intention that this is my inner child, and the way I'm going to treat this, I'm going to touch this, the way I'm going to hold it, like it is the representation of that. So eventually, all the theory and all the studying and all the books and all this, they had to come down, yeah, in an embodied way, and that happened through this forms of therapy, which I believe are incredibly supportive.
Have you ever seen, because that was something that I was struggling with, that as a child, healthy parent-child relationships were not modeled to me, definitely not by my own parents, definitely not by any other family units that I've seen. You talked about modeling and how important it is for our brain to just see that it is possible, to shift that perception that it is possible. Have you seen a healthy parent-child relationship or a healthy family unit in culture or media, something that is accessible to a lot of people, that you can recommend, that we can learn from?
Yeah, yeah. One of them is Natasha, on Instagram. There's Shailina Ayana that I absolutely appreciate, and I have her book. And it is still it's a book about becoming the one, in terms of becoming who we really are at our core. But a lot of that book is about how we work with our inner child, so we don't project or look at our partners or other being other people in our life for that kind of comfort. So there's that. Also, there are different. There's Vanessa Bennett, that she's a therapist, and her husband is also a psychotherapist, is the angry therapist. That's his handle. So they have a child, 4 years old. And there's also, I don't remember, I think her handle is securely no, I don't remember her name, but she looks like you, black hair, big eyes, and she's a mother of three. She is a childhood developmental trauma specialist, and also like a parenting specialist, and she's amazing. And she has 3 kids. I mean, like she's doing it with 3 kids. Also, the yoga couple, they're gonna have a child, but I'm following them for quite some time, and I know they're gonna be amazing parents. We also have Derek and Helene. Probably they're gonna be amazing parents because they're already like primed to see things in this way and be more open to that. So yes, of course they are public figures, but people have to be curious about these. Like I was literally Googling or like going on Instagram because it's really important to see the mirror neurons. If I didn't have it in my family, like I had to find it in some other way. And probably not in movies or anything that is like too marketing oriented or salesy or that kind of stuff. It was important to have like real people, like real relationships with their real struggles, and also not only the good part, because these people are not sharing just the good part, they're also sharing whatever the challenges are. Yeah, and they turned their struggles into their career or life, whatever purpose, and is being reflected in the relationship with their children. And actually, here in my reality, my therapist, I'm not doing therapy anymore, but I had the opportunity to see her outside the therapy office with her boy. He's 7, and her friend, and her friend has 2 girls. Um, and I was doing this workshop settings for children with all sorts of themes and games and stuff like that. And they would come, yeah, my therapist and her friend with their children, and automatically I could see from miles distance how these children were so, yeah, they were just like so connected to themselves, to their needs, to their emotions. They were just aware. They were attuned to the other children. They were attuned to me. I was like, whoa, whoa. So it is possible. And I was actually very, very blessed and grateful to have immediate contact with these people and to tangibly feel what the difference was is just incredible to be in the presence of this. Sometimes I will like, I don't even know how to communicate. I don't even know how to talk to them, because the society and the norm is to teach us to treat them as children, in the sense of not understand, having an idea that they don't understand. But these children, they're like super, super flexible, yeah, in their expression, and like so free in their expression. And I was like, wow, like I wished I was like that. So yeah, there's places and there's people online. There's always somebody that we can look up to. We just have to be willing to accept that that person has something that I would also like to have, and something that I admire in them, and it would be really, really helpful, and they will mirror that. And I appreciate these people who talk about these things, and not only about the positive but also the challenging stuff. So it's really precious, and they're offering a lot, asking nothing in return, which is beautiful.
Beautiful, and it's rare. I'm mindful of time. Do you have to go, or one last question? 5:28.
Let me see, what time do I have my women's circle tonight? 8:30 p.m. Yeah, I have time.
Okay. Just so close with something future forward. What is one thing that you're still learning, you're still practicing, and what is the next stage of your life that you're growing into?
To be an embodied grown up. I feel I just transitioned from this child being on the steering wheel, and now I feel like I'm the one driving my own vehicle. But it's still like early days to me, and I feel that I would absolutely love to bring more of this sense of healthy self, this connection to my parts, and this ability to feel more and the courage to feel more. So I feel for me it's really important to continue with this small steps, yet big at the same time, to titrate my way forward, but definitely adding one more brick to my sense of self, and another one, and another one, another one. And also in this process, stepping more and more and more and more into like my version of an embodied adult, like grown up person that is resourceful enough to deal with different things, to be in life. And still probably I will have my fears and my limitations, but my goal is to have the full trust that I have the resources inside to deal with whatever the situation might be.
Yes, that's a huge inspiration for me as well. And it's unbelievably helpful for me to have someone like you in my life modeling that for me. It's important that I have someone who's mirroring where I am, reflecting back where I am, is honest about where we both are in the process, and someone that I can get the inspiration from, that it is possible and I'm not alone with it. So thank you. And thank you for this. This was such a fun time. I really enjoyed this, and it was very much needed.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you for the conversation, and thank you for everything that you mean to me and in my life, because many, many times I said it, and I'm going to say it probably a lot of the times, that you put in words things that sometimes I'm not even able to express verbally. So you're helping me so much with that, and also with my blind spots, and for listening to me whenever I need a shoulder I can cry on or I can talk to. So I'm very grateful for that. And I'm very grateful to have this mutual and continuous exchange that is helping us both move forward.
Thank you. Same. Absolutely the same. Thank you for today. Much, much love.